What's going on, everybody? It is time for the Packers-Saints preview video. So I'm going to break down this matchup coming up on Sunday Night Football. And the first thing I want to take a look at is this Packers offense versus the Saints defense. And I think the biggest thing people are sort of focused on right now is, of course, that Davante Adams might not be playing on Sunday. So lots of people are worried that, that could be a big problem. But I want to remind people of last season, sort of whenever Davante Adams was out last year, what sort of happened. Because I was trying to look back last year. I was like, wait, what happened when he was out last season? Did we lose? And actually, last season, in the 4 games that he was injured, we were 4-0. So just because Davante Adams is out doesn't mean like, oh no, we're going to lose. That doesn't mean it. Obviously, last year, 4-0 with him gone. So I think even without Davante Adams, we could be great. In sort of what happened last year when Davante Adams was gone, Aaron Jones just went crazy, crazier than usual. He usually goes crazy, but this time it was like ultra crazy, out of this world crazy. And I brought up this stat line just to show you exactly just how crazy and how well he played and how the Packers utilized Aaron Jones. So this is like a fantasy site that sort of lets you like look at certain stats and stuff. So in split means when Davante Adams was playing, so 12 games last season. And right here is basically out of split, which means the games where only Aaron Jones was playing, Davante Adams was injured. So let's take a look at the difference between these stats. All right, so as you can see here, Aaron Jones was averaging 2.25 receptions per game with Davante Adams there in 12 games. When Davante Adams went out, Aaron Jones basically doubled that and was averaging 5.5 receptions per game. So obviously, if Davante Adams is out, Aaron Jones is going to be utilized a lot more in the passing game, most likely because, without a threat like Davante Adams, Aaron Jones will probably pick up the slack, sort of like he did last season when Davante Adams is gone. Then, of course, receiving touchdowns, we see he, got a little bit more work in that area as well. Receiving targets, of course, he got more receptions, so he got more targets. And, of course, his receiving yards are much different. His receiving yards per game last time with Davante, 16 receiving yards versus 70. So a massive difference. And so I just wanted to bring that point up first of all to say even if Davante Adams is out, Aaron Jones is going to do insanely well, and the Packers still have an insanely good chance, just sort of looking at last year. And, of course, with Davante Adams out, the question is, like, how will our receivers do, basically? And, of course, with Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Allen Lazard playing pretty well so far this season, I think we'll just have to see if they can, pick up the slack with Davante Adams gone, which I honestly think they can. So next, let's sort of take a look at this Saints defense and sort of how they perform. So, of course, first week versus the Buccaneers, they sort of shut down Tom Brady. So obviously after week 1, people were like, wow, Tom Brady, he looks like he might be washed up. Maybe maybe Tom Brady, doesn't have it anymore on this Buccaneers team. Who knows? Maybe all the magic was in New England, maybe Tampa, just, doesn't have that same stuff for Tom Brady. And so the Saints defense obviously played very well against the Buccaneers, held Chris Godwin to only 79 yards, Mike Evans to 2 yards. So honestly, the Saints defense played pretty well, very well in that game. The next game was sort of a game that people didn't really expect, I think, the Saints to lose. Coming up against the Raiders, they lost to the Raiders 34-24. And it's interesting looking at this game because even though the Raiders ended up pulling off the victory, if you sort of take a look at these receiving stats, the only person they had a problem stopping was Darren Waller. See, as you can see, tight end Darren Waller, 12 receptions, 105 yards. The next best guy only had 42 receiving yards. So they just had a problem shutting down Darren Waller, that big tight end, on that Raiders team. And I was sort of taking a look at some stats as well. And it's interesting because even though, the Saints ended up losing to the Raiders, through these first 2 games, the Saints are allowing 4.9 yards per play, which is the 3rd best in the NFL. So just because, this Saints team maybe didn't pull off the victory against the Raiders and the Raiders sort of came back and let Derek Carr basically sort of pick them apart on 3rd down mostly, this Saints defense is still very, very solid, very good. And just because, they're 1-1 and they let a game against the Raiders go by them doesn't mean that this team isn't very talented and very good because they have tons of great weapons on the defensive side. So this is still going to be a battle for this Packers offense, especially if Aaron Rodgers is gone as well. And so that's sort of one interesting thing I just sort of wanted to point out. Another thing that's sort of been hurting the Saints is they are leading the league in penalty yards. So that could be one other area where even though they're not allowing as many yards on offense, they're hurting themselves when it comes to basically penalty yards. So that's sort of what I wanted to break down when it came to, sort of just this Packers offense versus the Saints defense. And then, of course, next coming to sort of looking at how this Saints offense is going to face against this Packers defense. And, of course, the Saints have Drew Brees, and through these first 2 weeks, he hasn't looked like his normal self. I think some people are like, oh, Drew Brees is washed up, he's done. But honestly, I don't think you can sort of say that. It's only been 2 weeks, and we have no idea. Drew Brees could, come back and start doing insanely well just like he usually does. So I don't think you can really write off Drew Brees just because in 2 games, which is such a small sample size, you can't just write off Drew Brees because, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. But taking a look at his stats from the first 2 games, I don't know if I can show it up here, but I have it written down next to me. Well, as you can see some of his stats here. So he has 472 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. His completion percentage is 64.7%, which is 10% lower than his past 2 seasons. 93.5 passer rating, which is 16th in the league. In his passing yards, he's ranked 23rd in the league. So obviously, hasn't been great these first couple weeks. Of course, not having Michael Thomas doesn't help him at all. But as I said earlier, you can't just write off Drew Brees at all just because he is one of the best. He could come in and just have an insanely, productive game as he has countless times in the past. And if we take a look at this Packers defense, just sort of to give you an idea, we have been 10th in defense sort of when it comes to yards allowed per game. We've allowed 344 yards per game. So, in the top third of the NFL, not too bad. And then when it comes to rushing yards, we've allowed 223 rushing yards in 2 games, which ranks 12th in the NFL. So sort of in that top third area when it comes to defense overall. And I think the biggest thing for this Packers team that we are going to basically need to do to come out with a victory is stopping Alvin Kamara. Because Alvin Kamara is just one of the best, probably top 5 NFL running backs. And, the Packers defense in the past has had trouble stopping running backs. And that is one area where the Packers are really going to need to stop this Saints offense. Because if they can't stop Kamara, that's definitely going to be a problem. If the Saints can control the ball, can control time of possession, that'll definitely be a problem. So last week, if you take a look at Kamara's stats versus the Raiders, he had 174 total yards, 2 touchdowns. And so he had 13 rushing attempts for 79 yards and 9 receptions for 95 yards. So he went off last week when it came to receiving yards, but he also did average 6 yards per carry last week, considering he only got the ball 13 times. That's why he had 79 rushing yards. So Alvin Kamara is going to be a guy we have to watch, out of the backfield, running the ball. He's going to be a problem, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how the Packers can sort of face off against him. But those are the main keys, for this Packers defense, I'd say, coming into this matchup against the Saints. And, of course, with Michael Thomas, seemingly, I'm pretty sure he's out for sure. That's what I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be out, definitely. But still, Drew Brees is Drew Brees. You got to be weary, and it seems like the Packers, of course, know Drew Brees. They're not thinking, oh, Drew Brees is washed up. I've seen some things from Packers players being like, and Matt LaFleur being like, Drew Brees is, an NFL Hall of Fame quarterback, and you can't just, imagine that he's just no longer good. Of course, he is 41 years old. Maybe he's on the decline, but honestly, we don't know for sure. I think you have to watch this entire season to really gauge sort of, I guess, Drew Brees' skill level at this point. But those are basically the main things I wanted to break down. Some of the biggest keys I say coming into Sunday's matchup. It's going to be a good one, Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a great game to watch. But if you guys enjoyed this video, I would love if you like the video down below. And if you want to see some more Packers content coming up in the future, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Hope you guys have a great time watching this Packers game on Sunday. Go Pack Go, and I'll see you guys on the next video.